and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be tackling Midolin.
Okay.
It's this weight loss supplement, and people have sent us tons of stuff about it.
Yeah, it seems like it's everywhere these days.
Right, and they're making some pretty big promises, too.
Definitely.
So we've got their website, a few summaries of research, and we've even got some glimpses into what people are saying online about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think our mission today is to be like supplement detectives.
I like that.
Right. We got to figure out, is Midolin the real deal? Or is it just really good marketing?
Yeah, like, are they backing it up or is it all smoke and mirrors?
Exactly.
Let's separate the science from the hype.
Okay, so their big claim is that it unlocks metabolic power.
Okay.
And they promise to, like, melt fat,
Uh,
boost energy, and even lift your mood.
wow.
They even offer a 90-day money-back guarantee.
Really?
Yeah. So they must be pretty confident.
That's a bold move.
Right.
Well, it seems like they're banking on the whole more mitochondria equals more fat burning thing.
Right.
But remember that Harvard study they keep mentioning?
Yeah.
That just shows a correlation, not causation.
Oh, right. Right.
So just because you have more mitochondria
Yeah.
doesn't automatically mean you're going to be leaner.
So just having a bunch of these little powerhouses doesn't make you a fat-burning machine.
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, so it's more nuanced than that.
Way more nuanced.
Okay, well, let's get into the specifics then.
Okay.
Midolin has this blend of 6 key ingredients, and they really play up how exotic they are,
I saw that.
like maki berry and schizandra.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, I think it makes sense to group the ingredients based on their supposed benefits.
Okay.
Like, a lot of them focus on antioxidants and boosting mitochondrial function.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, for example, we've got maki berry,
Okay.
which they describe as this exotic purple fruit. And then there's amla, and they claim that that promotes mitochondria and aids digestion.
Uh-huh.
They're both marketed as, like, antioxidant powerhouses.
Do they live up to the hype?
Well, there's some research on both,
Okay.
but it's not as simple as Midolin makes it seem.
Okay.
So, for example, that 2024 study on maki berry
Okay.
that looked at anthocyanins
Okay.
and how they affect white adipose tissue.
Which is fat.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
It showed some promise,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't directly prove that eating maki berry leads to weight loss.
So while it might do something to your fat cells, it doesn't mean it's a guaranteed fat burner.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then with amla,
Yeah.
that 2016 study focused on muscle cells.
Okay.
And it showed potential for improving something called mitochondrial spare respiratory capacity.
Wow. What is that?
It's essentially a measure of how well your mitochondria adapt and produce energy when you're pushing your body.
Interesting.
So it's like a stress test for your mitochondria.
Okay, so it's like testing those little powerhouses. But again, does that mean you're actually going to lose weight?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right. Okay. What about the other ingredients? So we've got rhodiola,
Okay.
which they call an adaptogen, and then hematococcus, which is like a red algae.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
They claim that those also boost mitochondria,
Uh-huh.
but is there evidence for that?
Well, actually, both of those ingredients have shown some potential in boosting mitochondrial biogenesis.
Which is?
That's the process of creating new mitochondria,
Gotcha.
which is essential for energy production.
Right.
So, for instance, there's a 2019 study on rhodiola that suggests it might stimulate that process.
Okay.
And then there's the 2020 study showing that astaxanthin, which is the key component of hematococcus,
Uh-huh.
can do the same thing in muscle tissue.
So they might help your body make more of these energy-producing powerhouses. But is that the same as burning fat?
That's the connection Midolin's trying to make. But we need more research to say for sure.
Right.
Just because an ingredient can influence mitochondrial function doesn't automatically mean it's going to melt away pounds.
Okay, so we've got 2 ingredients left.
All right.
Theobroma cacao,
Okay.
which is basically cacao.
Right. The source of chocolate.
Right, exactly. And then schizandra, another berry.
Yeah.
What's the story with those?
Well, Midolin claims that Theobroma cacao is a tropical superfood with all sorts of benefits, boosting mitochondria, supporting healthy blood pressure, and even acting as an aphrodisiac.
Whoa. That escalated quickly.
Right.
But is there any science to back up those claims?
Well, there was a 2012 study
Okay.
that looked at epicatechin, which is a compound found in cacao.
Mm-hmm.
And they studied its effects on muscle tissue in people with type 2 diabetes and heart failure.
Okay.
And the results did show some changes in markers related to mitochondrial structure and biogenesis.
So there might be something there.
Yeah.
But it's a far cry from a weight loss miracle. Okay, and what about schizandra?
Well, a 2018 study found that Schizandra C, which is a specific compound in it,
Mm-hmm.
enhanced both mitochondrial biogenesis and something called autophagy in muscle cells.
Autophagy, what's that?
You can think of it as your cell's internal cleaning system.
Okay.
It gets rid of damaged components, which is important for overall cell health.
So it's like a detox for your cells?
Yeah, kinda.
That sounds pretty impressive.
It is interesting.
But does it actually help with weight loss?
That's where the research gets a little fuzzy.
Okay.
We need more studies to determine if that cleaner cellular environment actually translates to weight loss.
Okay, so we've got all these ingredients, each with its own set of studies and
Right.
supposed benefits.
Exactly.
But what are people actually saying about Midolin? Like, are people seeing results?
Well, the Midolin website has quite a few glowing testimonials from users
Okay.
who claim to have lost a lot of weight and experienced increased energy.
Like, what kind of testimonials are we talking about?
So, for example, Peggy says she lost 35 pounds and feels more confident.
Wow.
Russell finally shed 29 pounds.
Okay.
And Connie has energy to play with her kids again.
It makes it sound like a miracle cure, but you've got to wonder, is it really that simple?
Right. It's important to remember that those are just anecdotes,
Okay.
not scientific evidence.
So just because it worked for one person doesn't mean it'll work for everyone.
Exactly. There could be other factors at play, like
Yeah.
maybe they changed their diet or exercise habits alongside taking Midolin.
So those testimonials don't tell the whole story.
Right, they're just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so how do we separate those individual experiences from what the science actually tells us about Midolin?
That's what we'll dig into next.
Okay.
We'll take a closer look at the research and consider some important questions.
Sounds good. Stay tuned, everyone, for part 2, where we'll unpack the science and see if Midolin really lives up to the hype. Welcome back, everyone, for part 2. So in part 1, we dug into Midolin's claims. We explored their ingredient list. They're really pushing this idea that boosting your mitochondria is the key to unlocking weight loss.
Definitely playing up that mitochondria angle.
Right.
But like we said, we got to separate the science from the marketing.
Right.
So let's take a closer look at the research and see if Midolin's claims really hold up.
You mentioned earlier that just because an ingredient can influence mitochondrial function, it doesn't mean it'll magically melt away fat.
Right. It's not that simple.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So while some of Midolin's ingredients, like rhodiola and astaxanthin,
Okay.
they show some potential for boosting mitochondrial function, we have to be careful about how we interpret the research. A lot of the studies we talked about, they weren't specifically designed to investigate weight loss.
Right.
They might show that an ingredient can stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis
Okay.
or improve mitochondrial efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean you're automatically going to lose weight.
So it seems like there's a big leap there. Just because something happens at a cellular level doesn't mean it'll have a noticeable effect on the scale.
Exactly. It's like saying, because a car has a bigger engine, it's guaranteed to win a race.
Okay.
There are so many other factors involved.
Right. So how do we evaluate these studies and figure out what they really mean for someone considering Midolin?
Well, first you want to look at the study design
Okay.
and the specific outcomes they measured.
Okay.
Did they actually measure weight loss? Or were they looking at something else,
Like what?
like changes in blood sugar levels or muscle function?
So we need to make sure the research is actually relevant to the claim being made.
Exactly.
So if a company says their supplement boosts metabolism, we should see studies specifically on metabolism,
Right.
not just on something related to it.
Precisely.
You also want to pay attention to the sample size. A study with only a few people might not apply to everyone.
Right. A small sample size might not represent the wider population.
That makes sense. The results could be interesting, but they might not apply to me.
Right. And how long the study lasted matters too.
Okay.
Short-term results don't always last.
Right. It's easy to get excited about a study showing a quick change. But what happens after weeks or months or even years?
Yeah. You got to think long-term.
Okay, so we need to consider the bigger picture. It's not just about one study.
Right.
It's about all the evidence.
The overall weight of the evidence.
But you mentioned something else earlier that I wanted to touch on.
Like what's that?
Dosage.
Right.
How do we know if Midolin contains enough of each ingredient to actually do anything?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's a red flag that they don't disclose the exact amounts.
Right, they don't say how much of each ingredient is in there.
Yeah, and without that info, we can't know if the dosages they're using are actually effective.
So you're saying the dosage is important, but they don't tell us.
Exactly.
That's kind of suspicious, isn't it?
It's definitely something to consider.
Like, are they hiding something?
It does make you wonder.
Okay, so transparency is key. When it comes to supplements,
It really is.
if a company's not willing to share that info, it makes you think twice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we need to be wary of the hype. Just because it's on the ingredient list doesn't mean it's there in a big enough amount to do anything.
Right, you can't just assume that.
Okay, what about those glowing user testimonials we talked about? People claiming they lost weight and had more energy with Midolin. How do we square that with the science?
Well, those stories can be compelling. But remember, anecdotal evidence isn't the same as scientific proof.
Okay.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
And there could be other factors at play, like maybe they changed their diet or exercise habits.
So those testimonials, they don't tell the whole story.
They're just one piece of the puzzle.
It's like we only have a few pieces.
Yeah.
And we're trying to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, it's hard to see the full picture.
Okay, so we need to look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
The scientific research and the limitations of anecdotal evidence.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the science, the marketing, the importance of critical thinking. But there's one big piece of the weight loss puzzle we haven't touched on yet.
What's that?
Something no supplement can replace.
You're talking about lifestyle factors, right?
Exactly.
Things like diet and exercise.
Right. Midolin makes it sound like it's a magic bullet. But we all know it's not that simple.
Definitely not.
You can't just pop a pill and expect to lose weight without putting in any effort.
It takes work.
Okay, so let's talk about those things.
Okay.
What do we actually need to do to achieve lasting weight loss?
That's what we'll dive into in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good to me. Stay tuned, everyone, for part 3, where we'll explore the power of lifestyle changes and see how they fit into the weight loss equation. Welcome back, everyone, for the final part of our Midolin deep dive. So we've spent the last 2 parts looking at the claims and the ingredients and the research.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah, and we talked about those mitochondria.
Yeah.
And how Midolin is really pushing that angle.
Yeah, definitely a key part of their marketing.
But at the end of the day, we all know that weight loss isn't just about taking a pill.
It's about making real changes.
Right.
Lasting changes to your lifestyle.
Exactly. And that means focusing on those fundamentals. What you eat and how you move.
The basics.
Right. So let's talk about diet first.
Okay.
What does a healthy eating plan for weight loss actually look like? Is it all about deprivation and calorie counting?
Actually, no, it's quite the opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you got to forget those fad diets.
Okay.
You know, the ones that are super restrictive.
Yeah.
Those don't work long term.
Right.
It's more about making choices you can stick with.
Okay, so what does that actually look like?
Well, think about whole unprocessed foods.
Okay.
Like fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and whole grains.
So it's about giving your body good fuel.
Exactly. You want to feel nourished?
Not like you're starving yourself. Okay, what else?
Well, don't underestimate portion control.
Oh.
That's a big one.
Portion control's my weakness, for sure.
It's easy to overeat, even healthy foods.
Yeah, that's true.
So you got to be mindful of how much you're eating.
Okay. Any tips for that?
One simple trick is to use smaller plates and bowls.
Really?
It can actually trick your brain into thinking you're eating more than you are.
Huh. Interesting.
And try to listen to your body.
Okay.
Eat when you're actually hungry.
Uh-huh.
And stop when you're satisfied.
Not stuffed.
Fun?
Right, exactly.
All right, good advice. Now let's talk about exercise.
Okay.
How much do we actually need to move to see results?
Well, the good news is you don't need to be a marathon runner.
Okay.
Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week.
Okay.
Or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity.
What's the difference?
So moderate would be like brisk walking,
Okay.
cycling, or swimming.
Okay.
And vigorous would be like running HIIT workouts or competitive sports. Got it. And I can break it up, right?
Yeah,
It
definitely.
doesn't have to be all at once.
Even 10 minutes here and there can add up.
Okay, so find something you enjoy and just make it a habit.
Exactly.
So to recap, a balanced diet with reasonable portions and regular exercise. That's the key.
Those are the cornerstones.
And we can control those things no matter what supplements we're taking.
You got it, those lifestyle changes. They make a huge difference.
So it's like we've been saying. Midolin might promise a shortcut, but real lasting change comes from a holistic approach.
I couldn't agree more.
So as you're thinking about Midolin or any weight loss product, remember to think critically, do your research, and invest in yourself.
Yeah, make those healthy choices.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Midolin. We hope this is giving you the knowledge and tools you need to make informed decisions about weight loss. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.